sitting on top of a massive oil field. For people in Horse Hill on the Surrey-Sussex border, that is their new reality. Test drilling for onshore oil has begun, and I'm sure you can imagine there's a fair bit of tension. In a minute, we'll be speaking to the head of UK Oil and Gas about their drilling plans. But first, Bhavani Vaddi went to hear about the concerns in Horse Hill itself.
The peace and tranquility of this area is one of the reasons why Alex Gachet believes people will choose to stable their horses with her. Her family has been running these riding stables, inappropriately named Horse Hill, on the Surrey-Sussex border for 32 years. But the arrival of a new neighbour in the form of an oil drill has shattered her peace, and she says is damaging her business.
I've lost clients, people that keep their horses here. Removed them last year, we lost quite a few. And this year, the clients that are still here are very concerned. I'm disgusted with the lack of communication right from the beginning. We haven't had any of the top people talk to us, only the security men. And they've mainly informed us about the dangers of the protesters. As for compensation, no, there is no compensation. We've been told quite clearly there is no compensation.
Flow testing, that's tests to discover just how much crude oil is under the land here, started last month. The final flow test, as it's called, will take place here next week, after which the Horse Hill site should be completely cleared. The company will then apply for permission to return to the well to carry out longer-term production tests. That process could take up to 2 years. UK Oil and Gas has said that initial flow testing has produced far more high-grade quality oil than anticipated, and has claimed it could be the biggest onshore oil discovery in the UK since the 1970s. But not everyone is happy about this discovery. Environmental campaigners have set up camp near the Horse Hill drill site and wanted to read us this statement about why they are protesting.
The government is attempting to ride roughshod over the entire country by trying to force through unnecessary policies based on a 20th century non-renewable energy base. Now this is the 21st century, and dinosaur companies like UCOG simply do not make economic sense.
And a number of other campaign groups, including Frack Free Surrey and East Kent Against Fracking, are also against the drilling, even though UK Oil and Gas has said there'll be no fracking at this site.
I don't think the important question is whether or not you can call it fracking. It's definitely unconventional extraction. Beyond that, beyond the potential sort of health and environmental impacts, my real concern is the climate. We know now more than ever that we have to stop using fossil fuels. We have to make the transition very rapidly to renewable energy, to energy efficiency. Frack Free Surrey just thinks we should leave any oil, any gas that's under the ground in Surrey underground.
Lisa Short lives in the nearby village of Hookwood and fears having an oil well near her home will damage her local community. She helped organise a public meeting earlier this week where she says other residents shared her worries.
The area will be used as an experiment. There will be no profit from that well until crude oil price goes up 50% from where it is at the moment. I see no benefit to the area at all. We can look forward to a huge increase in the number of large lorries using our roads, and that's going to damage the road surface. We can look at air pollution that will be coming from the site, and we can also be looking at chemicals that have been put into the ground through the process, left in the soil.
There are half a dozen other sites across the southeast where companies hold licenses giving them permission to explore for oil and gas. So this tension between the concerns of communities and the drive for new energy sources could be mirrored elsewhere in our region.
Joining us in the studio, Stephen Sanderson. Stephen is the Executive Chair of UK Oil and Gas. That's the company that's found oil at Horse Hill. Stephen Sanderson, thank you for joining us. People who live in the area, they just want you to talk to them. They want the top people. That's you. You're the top person. The owner of the stable says there's been no communication. Why not?
I spoke to Alex Gash last night. I've spoken to the chairman of the Norwood Residents Association in the last 10 days. We have meetings set up to speak to them. So I think you have to understand that we have only just found out the results from this well, so we're also preparing what we're going to do in the future. And I think we're very open and transparent, and we'll be talking to people about where we plan to go.
I don't think the local MP would describe you as having been as open as you could be. He says, I expect the performance of the company to improve in respect of its local engagement. This is Crispin Blunt. He says you should consult thoroughly and in detail with the local community. It sounds like you've started doing that, but has it been a little too late?
I think you have to understand where we are in the stage of the process. I think it could equally have been that we flow tested this and we got nothing from it. So I think, I think it's an unfair criticism to say that we're not communicating with people. I think we are now in a position where we can say what we see as the future for Horse Hill and perhaps over the wider Weald. So I think people will get to understand our position, and we will liaise with them very, very closely.
Let's talk about the future. How much certainty is there about what's going to happen now?
Well, there's never any certainty in the oil and gas business. It's a risk business. We're still at a very early stage in this, but I think the results from this well clearly moved us from what I've described as a science project with the oil being in the ground to very much the verge of commercial reality. The rates from this well are clearly much better than I ever expected, and even at very low oil prices as we are at the moment, we're actually looking, I think, that we could break even. Clearly we might need $40, $50 to make it commercially highly viable, but I think people need to look at this as it's not so much for UK oil and gas. I think what we're looking at here is something potentially of national significance, in the sense that the wider Weald contains a very significant volume of oil, which I think we can get out with due consideration to the area. We've said quite publicly that the visual impact from these sites will be very negligible, in the sense that the wells, pumps will all be underground, that the only thing you'll see will be some oil storage tanks, which are about the same size as a grain silo. We'll control the production so that we minimize the actual road traffic impact. For instance, at Horse Hill, the plan is that the peak oil, which is only about 9 months or so, will have one tanker every 2 hours.
Well, it's only one tanker every 2 hours, and how much is extractable? There's been a lot of conversation, and the company has talked about who put that figure out there, but I've seen the interview with you where you said there are between 50 and 100 billion barrels. So how much is there that you can get out?
Well, let me be perfectly specific. Top experts, Newtech on the planet on this type of oil deposit said there's 124 billion underneath the Weald area. That's oil in the ground. Now we look at the sort of expectation of extraction is about 3 to 8%, so about 5%.
And how will you get it out? Because people are still concerned that there will be fracking. Can you say categorically that will not happen in Horse Hill?
I can say I've already said it about 6 times.
They still want to hear it. They still don't believe it.
Well, okay, I'll say it to everybody yet again. There is a 1,000 metre ceiling in the United Kingdom above which you are not legally enabled to use fracking. Now, you've seen the results from this well, that it's very, very high rates. It's actually the highest stable flow rate of any well in the UK onshore. So we actually don't need to use fracking.
On that note then, let me bring Keith Taylor in. If it was fracking, there would be the prospect of compensation for the local community. That's set out quite clearly, the figures for compensating, £100,000. Should there be compensation even if there is no fracking when something like this is happening in your backyard?
Well, I think frankly, we heard on that film there, the villagers saying there is nothing in it for the village. It's not a question. It's not a question of compensation. I know what's in it for you. You're going to make a great deal of money, even if you never extract any oil, because you will sell the drilling interests. Actually,
now, why would we sell the drilling? Why would we sell the drilling
investment? Please don't interrupt me. It's an investment, and it's worth money. It's already shot up the share price of UK Gold since the original announcement. The fact is, we had 194 countries in Paris agreeing a carbon reduction program to keep our global warming down to 1.7%. It is inescapable that if we take more fossil fuel out of the ground, we are going to have more global warming.
Let's just come back to the area. We're doing this thing again
is you, Stephen.
Keith Taylor, we're doing the thing of going to the big macro issues, and I want to try and stay local, because this is the Sunday politics in the southeast. So, Julian, Brazier, let me ask you, you know all about the passions people in rural communities have for where they live. Can you understand the concerns of people who discover that they are literally sitting on a massive oil well?
I can understand their concerns, and obviously I share Crispin's view that it is very important that the company builds up its consultation programme. But my parents live not very far from the country's biggest oil well at Witch Farm in Dorset, and it's a completely stable issue there. I mean, I've never heard any complaints in the local papers or whatever over the last few years on visits there. What is important to remember is that for a long time, despite very important we have these carbon targets, for a long time we will need oil, and unfortunately such a large proportion of the world's oil comes from very dangerous places. So finding some oil within the UK at a site where it can be commercially drilled should be regarded as something valuable.
Let me go back to Stephen Sanderson and talk about time frames. What happens now is largely dependent, I think, on permissions, isn't it? How long could it take before you are actually getting oil out of the ground?
Well, we've already got some oil out of the ground. If we're talking about the next phase, it could be 1 to 2 years, because there are 4 government agencies involved in the approvals. But can I come back to the point about no one in the area benefits?
Yes, briefly.
I think that's a misnomer, because this actually is, the best thing about this is that actually it will create a lot of jobs, not so many actually in the direct operations, but there's a huge supply chain that's involved in this, and that will have to be relocated to the southeast. And then there's a lot of induced jobs that come with it. At the moment, everything on the well has to come from Aberdeen.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let me put that briefly, and we really do only have about 30 seconds left on this. It will benefit. There will be jobs, Keith Taylor. That's a good thing for the community.
I think it underlines lack of vision. Your principal objective is to get oil out of the ground to make money.
That's his business.
In fact,
that's what he does.
Yeah, that's what he does. The government's position is not to encourage renewable energy. In fact, they're doing all they can to obstruct it.
Gentlemen, I appreciate that is probably like letting off a geezer here in the studio, but I'm afraid that is all we've got time for on this one.
Right.
I have got to promise you now, though, that we have got 60 seconds. Here's the news you may have missed this